There is a reason you are hearing these words now at this exact moment in your life. It is not random, it is not coincidence. The universe does not throw dice. When Carl Jung spoke of synchronicity, he described moments when inner transformation aligns so precisely with outer experience that chance no longer feels like an adequate explanation. If this message found you, it is because something in your inner world has ripened, and the external world is answering in kind. Women who enter their most powerful phase rarely recognize it at first. It doesn't begin with applause or external recognition. It begins in silence, in restlessness, in the sense that the old ways of living no longer fit. It is the faint yet undeniable stirring that the self, the deepest organizing principle of the psyche, has decided it can no longer remain hidden beneath masks, roles, and obligations. Perhaps you've noticed it. The conversations that once felt satisfying now echo hollow. The routines you once executed without question now weigh heavy. Even the roles that once defined you, mother, partner, daughter, achiever, feel like clothes that no longer fit the shape of your soul. What you are sensing is the breakdown of the persona, the social mask Jung said we all must wear to survive. For years, it served you. It allowed you to belong, to be accepted, to navigate the world. But every mask has an expiration date. When it begins to suffocate, the psyche sends its first signal. It is time to evolve. This moment is often misunderstood as depression or midlife crisis. But what if it is neither? What if it is the psyche's natural threshold, the doorway Jung described as individuation, the process by which the false layers die so the authentic self can emerge? Your body often knows before your mind does. Fatigue that no amount of sleep can erase. A strange heaviness in the chest when you repeat old performances of who you used to be. A restlessness in the gut that no external achievement can soothe. These are not malfunctions, they are signals. The unconscious has begun pressing against the container of the old identity, and cracks are appearing. This is the beginning of your most powerful phase. Not because you feel strong, but precisely because you feel weak. Power does not rise in the absence of vulnerability. It rises through the collapse of false strength. You are entering the desert, what mystics and Jung alike recognized as the necessary silence before rebirth. It is here that women discover that emptiness is not punishment but preparation. You are being stripped of what you no longer are, so that the woman you have always been, hidden, exiled, waiting, can finally breathe. And in this emptiness, something radical occurs. You begin to feel chosen, as if invisible forces have singled you out for a journey you never volunteered for. This is not delusion, it is initiation. You are being called to walk the path from the maiden's hunger for approval to the queen's sovereign knowing. The ground beneath your old life is dissolving, and though it feels like loss, it is the exact moment your deeper life begins. When a woman enters her most powerful phase, one of the first things to fall away is the mask she has carried for decades. Jung called this mask the persona, the collection of behaviors, attitudes, and appearances designed to satisfy the world's expectations. For years, it might have worked. It brought you acceptance, approval, sometimes even admiration. But what once served as protection eventually becomes suffocation. Have you felt it? That sudden heaviness when you try to play the roles you once performed with ease? The conversations that used to flow now feel like recitations from a script you no longer believe in. Even your own smile can feel foreign, as though it belongs to a woman you once knew but no longer recognize. This is the mask cracking. Jung understood that the persona cannot remain intact forever. The psyche has its own timeline, one not bound by years or calendars, but by inner necessity. Some women reach this breaking point at 35, others at 55, still others much later. The timing is not random. It arrives when the unconscious has stored enough suppressed truth, enough unlived life, enough unspoken rage and yearning that the false identity can no longer contain it. This collapse often feels terrifying. Careers lose meaning, relationships unravel, friendships thin out, invitations stop coming. You might withdraw from social circles that once energized you, finding small talk unbearable and performances intolerable. To outsiders, it can look like depression. To the psyche, it is initiation, because what Jung taught, and what few dare to accept, is that transformation always begins with symbolic death. The death of who you believed yourself to be, the death of the image you carefully curated for others, the death of the obedient self that performed in exchange for belonging. This death is not a mistake. It is the very condition for rebirth. You may find yourself in solitude more often now, not as a punishment, but as a womb. The psyche knows it must retreat to rebuild. This is why you feel the need to be alone even when you cannot explain it. Silence is no longer emptiness, it is gestation. And yet, with this solitude comes another revelation. You are different from others around you. You have always been different, but you've hidden it, even from yourself. Now the hiding costs more than the revealing. Concealment feels like suffocation, while exposure, though terrifying, carries the strange taste of liberation. This is the moment Jung described as the threshold of individuation, the shift from living according to external validation to beginning to hear the inner authority of the self. For many women, this involves the slow dissolution of what Jung named the father complex, the unconscious tether to masculine approval, whether from fathers, partners, or society itself. Suddenly, the opinions of men no longer define you. Their judgments lose their sting. Their approval, once currency, begins to feel irrelevant. At first, this indifference can feel like loss. Who are you if you're not performing to be chosen, loved, validated? But beneath that fear lies the truest discovery. You already carry within you the authority you once sought outside. The tribunal of your own soul is awakening. This stage is not glamorous. It is raw, lonely, bewildering. And yet, beneath the chaos, something magnificent is stirring. You are not being destroyed, you are being stripped. Stripped of what was borrowed, false, conditioned, so that what is eternal within you can finally step forward. The woman you once were is dying, not as punishment, but as release. And in that dying, the woman you truly are begins to take her first breath. There comes a phase in every profound transformation when life feels unbearably empty. You wake up and the old reasons for getting out of bed no longer inspire you. Friends ask what's wrong, but you have no clear answer. Nothing is wrong in the usual sense, yet everything feels different, stripped of color, stripped of meaning. Jung understood this stage as a liminal space, the interval between who you were and who you are becoming. Mystics called it the dark night of the soul. He compared it to a symbolic death where the old personality structure dissolves so that a new center of being can emerge. To the untrained eye, it looks like despair. But what if it is not despair at all? What if it is gestation? The desert is not barren in the way we think. Beneath the sand, seeds lie hidden, waiting for the season of rain. And so it is with you. Beneath the silence of your life right now, a new archetype is preparing to rise. This is why social life feels exhausting, why conversations that once engaged you now feel hollow, why even your body resists certain gatherings, recoiling at the falseness you once tolerated. You are not antisocial, you are incubating. The psyche withdraws its energy from old patterns so it can redirect it inward toward the birth of something authentic. But here is the paradox. While you feel abandoned, you are actually being chosen. It feels as though life has taken everything from you, yet in truth, it is clearing the field for a deeper harvest. Jung often said that the self, the deepest, most whole aspect of our psyche, cannot emerge until the ego's illusions collapse. You are standing in that collapse now. In this desert, your senses sharpen. You begin to feel energies beneath words. You notice the gap between appearances and essence. Dishonesty carries a taste you can no longer ignore. Superficiality drains you instantly. And while this sensitivity can feel overwhelming, it is also a sign. You are beginning to perceive reality through the intuitive function Jung described. You are no longer content with surfaces. You are reading souls. This heightened awareness is not paranoia, it is power. But power in its embryonic form. It has not yet learned how to stand tall, so it hides in solitude. Think of a queen not yet crowned, wandering her barren land, uncertain if she has lost everything or is on the verge of receiving everything. That is where you are now. And though the desert feels silent, you are not alone in it. The collective unconscious, the vast inheritance of all women who have walked before you, is stirring. You may feel presences you cannot name, ancestors whispering in dreams, archetypal figures rising in imagination, the sense that you are accompanied, though by forces you cannot see. Jung taught that these are not fantasies. They are the psyche's way of reminding you that your journey is not just personal. It is archetypal, transgenerational, collective. When you begin to sense this, the desert transforms. Loneliness reveals itself as solitude. Emptiness reveals itself as sacred space. And silence reveals itself as gestation. The desert is not the end, it is the womb of becoming. What feels like death is only the first contraction of a new birth. Every woman entering her most powerful phase eventually meets the one figure she has avoided the longest, her own shadow. The shadow, as Jung defined it, is everything we've repressed, disowned, or labeled as unacceptable. It is not only our anger and ambition, but also our boldness, our unapologetic desire, our capacity to say no without shame. From childhood, many women were taught to exile these qualities in order to remain lovable. To be good meant to be accommodating, pleasing, small, and so the shadow swelled quietly in the unconscious, waiting. Now, as your old life collapses, the shadow returns, not to haunt you, but to be integrated. This is why emotions you thought you buried begin to surface with raw intensity. Rage that once frightened you erupts, grief you thought you processed floods back. Needs you denied become urgent. It can feel like regression, like you're becoming less stable rather than more. But in truth, it is the psyche demanding wholeness. What if the parts you most feared in yourself are not flaws but sources of strength? What if the anger you repressed is actually sacred fire, fuel to burn away relationships and patterns that diminish you? What if selfishness, the word you feared, is really healthy self-interest, the ability to honor your own soul before dissolving into others? Women in this phase often report a strange recognition. I am not becoming someone new. I am remembering someone I have always been. The shadow, when brought into consciousness, stops being an enemy. It becomes an ally, a reservoir of power. But integration requires honesty, sometimes brutal honesty. You must admit the ways you betrayed yourself to be accepted, the times you silenced your truth to avoid conflict, the moments you gave love without boundaries and called it devotion. Jung insisted that healing begins when we stop pretending and allow ourselves to see the totality of who we are. Not an idealized self, not a polished persona, but the complex, contradictory, luminous, and dark being we truly are. This is why powerful women unsettle people, not because they are aggressive, but because they are whole. Their presence exposes what others hide. They become mirrors in which others see their own fragmentation, and mirrors can be uncomfortable. Have you noticed this shift? That your tolerance for dishonesty has vanished, that pretense drains you, that relationships requiring you to perform feel unbearable. This is not arrogance, it is individuation. It is the soul refusing to shrink any longer. And here lies a profound truth. When you embrace your shadow, you dismantle one of the deepest chains, the need for external validation. For centuries, women were trained to perform for approval, especially masculine approval. Jung named this the father complex, the internalized voice of patriarchal authority that tells women they are only worthy if men affirm it. But when this complex dissolves, when a woman finally sees that she does not need permission to exist, something radical happens. She becomes sovereign. Her authority no longer comes from applause or rejection. It rises from her own depths, and nothing outside can add or subtract from it. This sovereignty is terrifying at first. It feels like stepping into a wilderness with no map, no hand to guide you. Yet it is precisely here that your power begins, because the woman who no longer needs to be chosen has finally chosen herself. When Jung studied myths and dreams, he discovered that our lives are not only personal stories but also archetypal dramas. Beneath your everyday experiences runs a deeper current, the passage of the feminine soul through stages of becoming. And in this stage of your life, the archetype of the maiden is giving way to the queen. The maiden archetype is necessary in early life. She seeks love, approval, and recognition from the outside world. She learns who she is by reflecting herself in the eyes of others. Her beauty, her charm, her innocence, these are her currencies. But this is only the beginning, never the destination. For if the maiden clings to her reflection too long, she remains dependent, always waiting to be seen, always living as a performance for an audience. The queen, by contrast, carries her authority within. She is not waiting to be crowned. She crowns herself by descending into her own depths and claiming what she finds there. Her value is not negotiated by others. It radiates from her center. This is the archetypal shift you are living now. No longer a seeker of validation, but a sovereign of your own soul. This transition is often marked by a profound withdrawal. The outer world loses its grip. The theater of appearances feels exhausting. Your attention turns inward, and in that turning, a new current of energy awakens. Jung recognized this as the transformation of libido, not just sexual energy in the narrow sense, but the life force itself, where once your energy was scattered, chasing approval, shaping yourself for others, surviving roles, it now begins to consolidate. And in that concentration, it becomes magnetic. not because you're trying to attract anything, but because you embody pure creative potency. This is not about seduction or performance. It is the return of erotic power in its original form, the generative force that fuels art, love, vision, and creation. This is why women in their most powerful phase often appear luminous, regardless of age. Their beauty is no longer youthful in the fragile sense, but archetypal, carrying the glow of authenticity. It is the difference between performing sexuality and being erotic energy itself. The queen does not need to do anything to draw attention. Her presence reorganizes the room simply by being there. At the same time, something equally mysterious begins to happen in the external world. Events align with uncanny timing. The right people appear at the right moment. Opportunities you never forced seem to fall into your path. Jung called this synchronicity, the alignment of inner authenticity with outer reality. When you stop broadcasting confusion and contradiction, the universe no longer mirrors it back. Life begins to reflect coherence. But with this coherence comes a paradoxical solitude. The queen's coronation is invisible. No one sees the moment she takes her throne within. No applause, no external confirmation. It is an inner knowing, witnessed only by the self. True individuation, Jung said, is lonely, because it detaches you from collective illusions and leaves you standing in the clear air of your own truth. And yet, this solitude is also freedom. When you no longer depend on others to see you, you can finally see yourself. When you no longer need to be chosen, you discover that you have always been the chooser. This is the moment when archetypal power awakens. The maiden has died, the queen has risen, and with her, a sovereignty that no opinion can grant and no rejection can take away. Every true initiation ends with a test. For women entering their most powerful phase, the test is not external, it is inner. After the death of the mask, after the solitude of the desert, after the return of the shadow and the awakening of archetypal power, one final question remains. Will you stay faithful to your authentic self when the old life calls you back? Because it will. The world prefers the smaller version of you. Family, partners, friends, colleagues, many of them unconsciously benefited from the woman you used to be, the one who gave without boundaries, who performed for approval, who diminished herself to maintain harmony. When you step out of that role, their discomfort grows. They call it concern, but beneath it lies fear. Your transformation forces them to face their own stagnation, their own shadows, their own buried power. This is the ultimate test, to remain true when regression would be easier, to walk forward without applause, to endure the loneliness of authenticity rather than betray yourself for belonging. Jung warned that individuation is not comfortable. It is radical fidelity to the self, even when it costs relationships, approval, and certainty. How do you know if you are following fear or intuition? Jung's wisdom was simple. Fear contracts, while intuition expands. Fear makes you smaller, tighter, clinging to control. Intuition, even when leading you into uncertainty, carries a subtle sense of rightness, of movement toward wholeness. The deeper you listen, the more you will know the difference. If you remain faithful, something extraordinary happens. You realize that your transformation is not just personal, it is generational. The wounds you've healed, the shadow you've integrated, the sovereignty you've embodied ripple through the collective unconscious. Every woman who chooses her authenticity over performance makes it fractionally easier for the next woman to do the same. Your grandmother's silence, your mother's sacrifice, these patterns dissolve as you refuse to repeat them. You are not only becoming yourself, you are healing the lineage, and the impact doesn't stop there. Jung believed the psyche is interwoven with all of life. When one soul individuates, it alters the field for everyone. This is why your power feels larger than personal achievement. You are part of a movement toward greater consciousness, one woman at a time. But remember this, individuation does not end in glory, it ends in simplicity. The revelation is not that you've become someone new, it's that you've remembered who you always were. The queen was always within you, waiting beneath the rubble of roles and expectations. Your power is not something you earn, it is something you allow. The universe sent this message to you not as persuasion, but as confirmation. You already know. You felt it in your body, in your restlessness, in your refusal to keep pretending. You are crossing the threshold where everything false dies so everything true can finally breathe. This is your most powerful phase, not because you are invincible, but because you are indivisible. Not because life will become easy, but because you will no longer abandon yourself in order to survive it. And as you stand in this sovereignty, something subtle shifts. You stop waiting to be seen, and you begin to live as the seer. You stop chasing love, and you become love itself. You stop trying to belong, and you embody the truth that belonging was never external. It has always been to your own soul. The woman you were is gone. The woman you are has arrived, and the universe smiles because it knows you are finally ready to take your throne.